for tuning in to the WingSpace Podcast. This podcast is not a replacement for mental health treatment or professional health care. In case of crisis or emergency, please contact your local healthcare provider or dial 911.
Hey there, and welcome to the WingSpace Podcast, a place to take up space. We are rounding out our 5th season of the podcast, and we've been focusing this whole season on the 5 pillars of wellness. We've talked about food and nutrition, sleep, stress, movement, and relationships. And today I've got 2 of my good friends with me, and we're going to talk about relationships as it pertains to being a mom and the different stages of motherhood. So Meredith and Anastasia, welcome to the WingSpace.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So glad to have you guys here. Those of you that have been listening to the podcast for a while, you've seen both of their faces before. And Anastasia, you're the newest mommy of the bunch.
I am. He's only 4 months old.
Yeah, you're 4 months in, and I'm getting ready to launch my oldest, and then Meredith, you've got the guys in the middle. Meredith, how old are your kiddos?
8 and 8.5, as she would tell you.
Yes.
But and 12.
Okay, 8 and 12. Anastasia, your little guy is 4 months, and then mine are 17 and almost 19. And it's been really interesting because our paths have crossed for a very long time outside of the hope and healing space. You guys you didn't know me when my kids were born, but certainly when they were really little. Meredith, I think you mentioned the other day that you think Trent was I think we figured out Trent was 3 or 4 when you and I first met each other.
3. Mm-hmm. Crazy.
And then, of course, I've had the privilege and honor of being around you guys when you became moms and stepped into those shoes. So that's just fun to kind of see things go full circle. So this episode is going to air the week after Mother's Day. So we're going to be honoring our own moms and also honoring ourselves as mothers. Let's start with the good stuff first. What do you guys think are some of the best things about being a mom?
I feel like the first thing that pops into my head is everyone tells you, right? When you have a kid, everything changes. And you can say it until you're blue in the face. And then once you go through that experience and they're born and you hold them, you're like, oh my gosh. And I think that just that transition has been so fun. His personality is starting to come out. He's less like a little blob. He was a fun blob, but now he's playing and smiling and he is very clear about his likes and dislikes. And it's really exciting to see him see the world for the first time. Things that we would take for granted because we've seen them thousands of times. He is like the ceiling fan is currently his BFF. I've seen ceiling fans every day, my entire life, right? And he will watch them as long as he can. So finding the joy again in those small things, I think has been such a joy for me.
I remember my first Mother's Day as a mom. And I just remember thinking my son he was born in March, so he was only a couple months old. And I just remember thinking that why do we celebrate moms on Mother's Day? Because I felt so grateful for him that I was like, but he's the only reason that I'm a mom. And I want to celebrate him because he's the reason I'm a mom. I was just feeling so blessed and grateful. And, I always wanted to be a mom. So, I think it's, everybody has a different perspective on motherhood with that. But wanting to be a mom when I'm a kid and I'm just thinking about it as this abstract concept, and then actually being a mom and being responsible for these little people and watching them grow into their own, very strong and varied personality traits. It's just wild.
Yeah, motherhood for me has been the hardest and greatest role I've ever played. I mean, like you said, we're responsible for this person for everything, yet they give us so much as well. Just this morning, Trent, who's 17, he was getting ready to leave for school, and I was sitting in my usual spot reading the Bible and drinking my coffee, and he came over and he put his head on the top of my head, and I leaned up And I realized that like his forehead was right there and he was just waiting for me to like kiss his forehead so he could leave. And it was just like this weird little dance that just happened just like that. And he was like, okay, see you later. And I don't know, just watching them grow into their own people, yet still need us, this like home base and this place that's safe and comfortable. And sometimes it's messy and ugly because we are safe for them and they can do all the things, but also just knowing like they're just like our biggest and our greatest. I don't know. It's so hard, like you said, it's so hard to encapsulate that in just like one sentence.
Hearing you guys talk about them growing, it just it's so exciting and so bittersweet because I feel like he's already grown so much, and thinking like, oh my gosh, there's still so much more to come. So hearing you all talk about it just making me think like, what's he going to be like when he's 8? What's he going to be like when he's 18? And I feel like that's just fun to think about and also sad because I know it's going to be here before we know it.
I had a lot of moms. I think this happens to everybody, but I had other older moms when I had babies tell me like, oh, just wait until they're this old and this happens. And so wait until this, and I always try to just be more in the moment of like, well, I'm just going to enjoy them at this age because that's the age they are right now, which is much easier said than done, obviously. But I always, I think we get really bogged down into missing them when they were little because that was such like a special experience. Like you just don't, it's not something you can recreate. Right. But reminding myself that, like there'll be good experiences and fun and new things at every stage of their development, even when they're not tiny, squishable, adorable babies anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and we have the last, and we don't always know that it's the last. The last time they want us to tuck them in. The last time, I used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" to them every night, and I don't remember when it stopped with Connor, but I remember the night that Trent looked at me and said, "Mom, you don't need to sing that to me tonight." And I was like, wow. Okay, so we're done with this now. And it's so cool to think about how far they've come and how much they've grown. And then there's so much ahead, right? I mean, we have the countdown on for when Connor is shipping out, and it's just like there's so much ahead in his future, but yet there's almost 19 years that we've had the joy of being with him. Meredith, you were talking about, when they're so squishy and so cuddly and stuff, there comes a time, and you're on the cusp of it, Meredith, because you've got this little teenager, right?
Mm-hmm.
There comes a time when they no longer want hugs and they no longer want, that physical affection. But we know as mental health providers that physical touch is really important. So my boys always loved dinosaurs. It was just a thing that was a big thing in our house. So we created the T-Rex hug. And so when they were 11, 12, 14, they really didn't want to hug. I would come up to them and I would say, okay, T-Rex hug, and so we just put our hands to our sides. Those of you that are watching, you can see my hands, but if you're listening, just imagine like, your hands are tucked up to your sides and you're just having your little T-Rex hug. And it was our way of being able to still,
Connect.
Have a hug, but it's not like a real hug. And most of the time that little T-Rex hug turned into at least a little, side hug type thing, because they still need that, even though they don't think they do, because they're too big for that, or they're too old for that, or whatever.
Yeah. I think reminding myself that as they get to that age, even, I think even when you're like 17, you still need some forms of, like affection and reassurance and things like that. Obviously. I mean, I need it now. So, but I think sometimes you forget that when they're not like so demanding for it, like they are when they're babies and toddlers. I mean, Michael used to hold my hand while we ate dinner. Like he wouldn't eat unless he was like holding hands with me. Which we joke about now because now, he like barely acknowledges our existence, half of the time, which is all very developmentally normal.
Yes.
I am aware of that, but it's a joke. It's like, you used to not even be able to eat food without touching me.
I used to have to drive down the road with one hand on the steering wheel and one hand behind me to hold whoever was behind me wanted to hold
That's
my
fair.
hand while I drove. And, you know, sometimes I was like holding a big toe because they weren't big enough. Mommy, hold me, hold me. And I'm like, I can't reach you, dude, but here, give me your big toe, you know? And it's like these are the things we do because that's what they want. And I'd give anything for somebody to want me to hold their big toe
I
now.
know. Right? It's sad but true. Yeah. Fun fact, the first time I subluxated a rib was because I was doing that with Michael when he was in his infant car seat, and I was like behind, like doing like this, and I popped a rib. Yep.
I told one of the boys one time that I would stand in front of a moving train for them. You know, I would pop out a rib for them. I don't remember which one it was, but they looked me in the face and they were like, but if you died, you'd be of no use to us anymore. Like you'd be gone. And I'm like, yeah, but you would be alive. And they're like, yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. And then I was like, you'll never be a mom, so you'll never understand.
Like, it's exciting. Like right now, he doesn't like to be in the back seat by himself. I've talked to you on the phone and I'm like, well, he's very upset because he's back by himself. He can see me, but nobody is directly next to him.
Mm-hmm.
We went to the zoo yesterday and one of us sat in the back seat each way and he was fine. But if he's back there by himself, nobody's going to enjoy the car ride.
I'll never forget the time my mom was driving and I was in the back seat with Connor. He was like 6 weeks old and he was screaming his head off. And she was like, Jennifer, just take him out of that thing. It's not like it's illegal or something. And I was like, actually, it is. I actually cannot take him out of his car seat while we're driving down the highway. But thanks, Mom. She drove down Skyline Drive one time while she was nursing me, and my brother was 4 in the back, you know, climbing all around. And I'm like, this is why we have seatbelts now.
Those are actually prime examples of why there are laws now. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. What have you guys learned about yourselves since you became a mom? I know for you, Anastasia, it's much more recent, but
first thing that pops into my head is that I don't need as much sleep as I thought I did to be a functioning human.
That's
so true.
Yeah, like I was the queen of naps. If I didn't get 8 or 9 hours, I was cranky and miserable and just counting down the moments until I could take a nap. And now I can't tell you I can tell you the last time that I had more than 8 hours of sleep or more than 6 hours of sleep in one stint, and it was Christmas night. So, but the first few weeks you're like, what is happening? And now it's kind of like, okay, well, this is my life. This is all right. And I'm not a cranky human. I can function and do things, but that's probably the first thing.
Yeah. And here's what I'll say is that it doesn't last forever, because at some point you'll get children that then sleep, you know, you actually go in and you're like, are they breathing right now? Because they've been asleep for like 12 hours. I really hate sometimes, and I think we even have a blog post on this about like, well, back in the good old days, or, you know, when I was a kid type thing. But it is true that some of those sayings are true in that this too shall pass. I mean, your days of sleepless days and nights will end, and you won't even know that it's over, right? You'll look back and be like, oh, wait, he's been sleeping through the night for a couple days now. I've slept 8 hours, 3 nights in a row. What's happening here?
Yeah. My son woke up, I would say, about every 2 hours for the first like 2.5 years of his life. And that just became very normal. And, you know, now, and I know you can probably relate to this, Jen, like now, like I want to go to bed before my kids do at this point, you know, like they're legitimately like still up and, you know, they're getting ready for bed, but and I'm like, I want to be asleep now. Like, can't you guys just go to sleep? I'm tired, Now I'm just like, but I do get, a solid 8 hours. And I have for quite a while actually now, which is weird to think about. But yeah. It was
No, my kids definitely put me to bed now. On school nights, I will say, or work nights, I should say, Connor does go to bed before us. He says good night before us, but I still hear him. So I think he's still awake. He's just, is that little man I hear in the background, making his presence known.
Yes, he's found his voice.
His pterodactyl screeches, as you said.
Is he crying or is he just making noises?
He's probably just making noises. He doesn't sound like he's crying. He this week, the last week, has learned to scream, and he really is enjoying finding his voice. So he'll be like cooing, and then he'll scream, and then he'll giggle. And he we'll do that. And if he's playing and he's really excited, it's just very loud. Like,
I love that.
yeah. So I'm joking that this is his pterodactyl phase because that's literally what he sounds like sometimes. And it's really hard to not laugh because it's quite funny. So, but yeah.
Well, and then your laughter is reinforcement for him to continue to do it. So
yeah. So that's why I'm trying to just, and then when he makes cute sounds, really smile. So those are the ones. But we were FaceTiming my mom and she was like, why is he screaming? I was like, he found his voice. Like, that's just, it's not a mad scream. He like looks around to see if anyone's looking. Like, he gets very excited. My dog does not enjoy it.
I bet not.
No, she's over it. She'll run away when he starts screeching. She's fine with all the sounds. She just doesn't like the high pitched ones.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, I guess their ears are so much different than ours, and they can hear things at different frequencies than we can. So his screech is probably much more screechy to her than it is to us.
In line with what changed us, I was thinking actually back to, what was a big change other than the sleeping thing, which I think is probably the biggest for everybody when they become moms. Showering, honestly, was a big change for me, at least, because I had to take the fastest showers I've ever taken in my whole entire life when I had, like newborns who were preachy and needy and didn't want to be separated from me. And I feel like that skill has translated throughout.
Well, I feel like it's just the creativity of moms, right?
Yeah.
Being able to, figure out, okay, today's the day I'm going to wash my hair, not wash my hair, shave the legs, not shave the legs. I'm taking the quick 2-minute shower. I'm taking the everything shower that sometimes we talk about, and you have a lot of time for an everything shower. Let's just be honest. Anastasia, you haven't probably had one of those in 4 months. So your time will come.
I will say that is like my only, I have no problem. I'll take all the baby stuff all day, but I'm like, I need to take a shower. So I need and I'm like, I'm going to take 15 minutes, whatever I like. And I literally like go somewhere else. I'll shower in the shower at the far end of the house. So I hear nothing because that's like, I'm just like, I just need a few minutes to myself.
Good for you.
And so that has been a big, and some nights it's a quick one, but every time that I can swing it, I'm like, I don't want a baby monitor. I don't want to have to listen. Like, I just want to be able to shut my brain off for a few minutes. So that
you hear phantom baby cries while you're in the shower, because I still hear those, even though my kids are 8 and 12.
Yes, I do. But at least I know, like, okay, he's right there. And if it's a night that I need a super fast one and I have the monitor, then my shower's over and I hop out and I do my thing. But it's one of those things where it's just a little bit of time and then keep going. So
yeah, I feel like the bathroom in general is something that has changed. Because even now, as teenagers, I will hear my kids come through the living room and say to my husband, "Where's mom?" And he says, "She's in the bathroom," and their footsteps still come towards me. And I'll talk to you when I'm done. So yeah, personal space is not something.
They get older, they expect all the personal space for themselves, but
sure,
still somehow don't recognize it for us.
Well, it's different, Meredith.
Yeah, obviously, clearly. Michael said something to me about, he was joking around and he was like, "Why are you so clingy, bro?" Because also you become bro. I don't know. I mean, I know Jen is probably very aware of that, but and I just jokingly responded to him and I was like, "Because you exited my body. That's why." And he was like, "All right, that makes sense." Yeah, it does. Thank you.
The transition from mama to mommy to mom to bro is like heartbreaking. And I think for me, I mean, the day they were like, "Bro, come on," what? And I'm like, I'm sorry. Were you talking to me or what? So
well, hopefully it comes back to mom. Like, hopefully you're in the bro stage and then it'll go back to mom.
Yeah. What's cute is that Trent actually when he texts me, it's mum, M-U-M, mum. So, and British? I think part of that is so him and I have this funny thing where we will speak in a British accent to each other. So I'll call him and we just start speaking to each other in a British accent. So I'm not sure if that's where it came from, but yeah, when he texts me, it always says mum. And then if he's mad, it says mom. And I'm like, oh, so, I just got my full name called out.
That is too funny. Yeah, I try to embrace the bro thing because I feel like, okay, well, that at least is like you're comfortable with me and you're joking with me, and yeah, Anastasia, ideally that is not a forever situation, but it is jarring, I think, every time still. I'm like, what? Okay.
I'm cuz sometimes also.
Oh,
Cuz.
I've not
Yeah.
graduated to that.
It's gotta be a new one.
I was reading this thing on Instagram the other day and it reminded me Trent has no problem, and Connor too, if they're like playing on their video game and I'll come in and say, hey, good night, mom, love you, and then off I go. I think 9 times out of 10 they did not mute their mic when they said that to me. The thing I was reading on Instagram was that somebody had that interaction with their child and then subsequently heard, what do you mean you don't tell your mom you love her? You need to do that, because I guess somebody had like on the mic had made fun of them for saying that. And he stuck up for himself and for his mom. It was like, you need to tell your mom that you love her. That's really cool too. Once they, when they're little, they say things, but they don't really know what they mean. Right. I mean, eventually your little guy is going to say, I love you or something like that. But when they actually know what it means and then they say it and they voluntarily say it, that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The equivalent that I have is the smile, right? Like that, like when they wake up and they know it's like that knowing smile that just takes up their whole face. Or when you walk into a room and they see it, like that's his version of I love you right now. Because it's like that excitement.
And it's a whole body smile.
Yes.
Right? When their hands and legs are shaking and yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is the best feeling because honestly, when I had little kids, I felt like a celebrity, right? Because like every time they saw me, they were just unbelievably excited to see me. Like I was their favorite person. My husband is amazing, trust me, but I was definitely their favorite person, and it's a great feeling. It's a nice ego boost.
Mm-hmm.
Which, as a mom, especially a newer mom, like you definitely need that.
Yeah. Well, and as we get older, we get into different stages where it's hard, and they're all hard for different reasons, but they're all great for different reasons. We go from the little newborns that, are so squishy and lovable, and then they turn into toddlers that are trying to come into their own world. And then, the elementary school years when they're trying to figure things out with their peers and all that. And, then they get into older teens. And my mom literally said to me the other day, I said, I can't believe how old they are, like how big they're getting. And my mom looked me dead in the eye and said, you do know that you're my baby, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay, you're right. I mean, I'm sure that's hard too when you're watching your 40-something child try to do all the things too. Yeah. So Anastasia, if we have a mom that's listening who, let's say she's expecting or she's just had her newborn baby, what advice do you have for that very, very new mom as a veteran 4-month-old mommy?
Oh yeah, that's a funny statement. I think that I would say is just like take it one day at a time, because every day is going to be different, and like the nights are really hard in the beginning. And I think that it's one of those things where it's like I had to take it back to chunking, right? Like, okay, what am I going to do between now and 6 p.m.? Okay, from 6 to 12, what's that going to look like? And it feels kind of like Groundhog Day a little bit, where you get up and you do the same thing over again. And then one day it's different. I don't know how else to describe it, but I think that like taking it one day at a time, breaking it down as small as you need to, and knowing that like I don't think anybody finds that time easy at all. And I think also like depending on your level of support, it's gonna be different for everyone. So break it down as small as you need to get through to the next chunk, and then find the joy in what it looks like, right? Like those middle of the night feedings are exhausting, but it's also such a great moment to bond, and it's going to get less frequent as they get older. So again, like finding the joy in the small moments so that you are like, okay, I'm doing it right.
And I'll say, Anastasia, I love watching you from afar because obviously you're not here in our general area with us anymore, but I love watching the moments that you take for yourself. So you've already told our listeners that you make sure that you take that shower and you're making time for yourself. But I love to see that, you're taking walks with just you and the dog and leaving the little guy at home, and you're going to yoga classes and you're going to exercise classes and you're taking time for yourself. And every day might look a little bit different, but you're still making yourself a priority. And I love that.
I feel like it's easy to fall into, oh, I can't go because I can't leave him. And I can. Like, I have a great partner. Like, I mean, when my in-laws were in town and when we have family here and they're like, do you want to have a date night? The first time I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, wait, they're only here for a week. If we don't go now, it's going to be another month. So yeah, let's go. Let's go do something. And it really does make a difference because you remember that like you're still a human and you're still you, right? Like it's just a different, you get to take, I mean, your mom hat's still on, but you get to like go be just Anastasia or just part of your relationship or out with friends. And it really does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Meredith? What about for that mom that's got kids that are coming up into that elementary, middle school? What's your best advice for them?
Well, I actually heard on something that I can't remember a few weeks ago, but it was talking about how you go from being like a manager to a consultant. And I thought that that was such a perfect analogy for that transitionary motherhood stage because, when your kids are little, you're the manager and you are controlling all the things, right? I mean, literally, when they eat, how they eat, what they wear, where they go, who they hang out with, all these things, right? And then, so now I'm in the stage, especially with my older one who's in middle school now, of trying to remember to be the consultant, right? And I think because of like our jobs, we have like another like unique perspective, I think, on motherhood because I have worked with so many kids of varying different ages and families, and understanding that preteens and teens don't really like being told what to do, right? And so obviously I have to tell them what to do for, like necessity type things. But remembering that like, if my son comes to me and is complaining about something that's not a problem that I need to fix, that's not if he's complaining about being hungry, well, okay, well, like, let's get you some food. That's a problem that we can fix. But if he's just complaining about like issues with a friend or annoyances with a teacher, that's when I have to remember to be the consultant, not the manager, right? Because me trying to solve that problem, he doesn't want to hear that. I'm just going to sound like I'm out of touch. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's been forever since I was in school, the more of the honestly attentive behaviors that we would use in therapy session, quite honestly, like reflective listening. And that's been helpful, I think, because I see that a lot in session with clients where they complain about their parents always trying to fix things or play devil's advocate. And, that tends to create a divide. So I'm hoping not to, but, sometimes those things are unavoidable. But that's probably the biggest thing is letting them stretch their wings, but they're still young enough that I need to be in charge of some stuff, but how to decide which stuff and how much stretching are we allowing. We're not giving an inch and taking a mile, and finding that balance is really tricky.
That description was really good. Like consultant versus manager, because that is like right. You are right at that stage.
I feel like as they get even older, the image of like being a cheerleader was the image that I see for myself because I'm rooting them on. I know when I have to be quiet, right? Like the cheerleaders are not cheering when, they're getting ready to try to kick the field goal, right? But as soon as the field goal is done, whether they make it or not, there's some kind of a cheer that happens, right? Sometimes we take a knee because there's a problem and we're just going to kind of wait and see what happens. So I do feel like there's still some consulting that happens, hey mom, what do you think or whatever, but we kind of have to, at this point where I am, I have to let them kind of figure it out in a way that I'm still there to help pick up the pieces if things don't work, but they really have to figure that out. They have to kind of do their own thing. It's really hard. It's hard to go from managing it all to being available for consultation when necessary, to, just cheering them on and supporting them when they need support and just watching them do their thing. But I would say, just to kind of wrap things up, that I fully agree with what both of you said, in that take it day by day, enjoy every day. Today is going to be the last time that you get to live this day, right? So what happens tomorrow is going to be different. So treasure it, enjoy it, pay attention to the smiles and the laughs and the giggles and the memories, because those are what we really need to cherish at the end of the day. And honor your progression from, sole provider of life to being a cheerleader and being able to watch them kind of soar and do the thing that we have. People have asked me, how do you feel about your son joining the military? He's doing the thing we taught him to do, right? We taught him to get to the edge of the nest and to spread his wings and fly. And he's doing that. And that's what he's supposed to do. Not that I'm not going to be totally heartbroken and sad,
right,
but I'm also super proud of him, and like, he's doing the thing. So moms, you can do this. Reach out to your other mom friends, because we all need our tribe. We all need our people that are going to cheer us on and support us when we need it. And also tell us when we need to maybe do something different. So Meredith and Anastasia, it was great to connect with you guys and to have us all on one screen again. We miss you so much, Anastasia, but we're so happy and excited for you and your little family. Thanks for joining me today, guys. I really appreciate your motherly words of wisdom for our listeners. And listeners, we're glad that you joined us. We are glad that you took the time to listen. I would invite you to like and share, send to a friend who might need some motherly encouragement. And as always, I hope you have a great day.